The turkey in my oven wasn't the only thing slowly breaking down that day. The message had come 2 days before Thanksgiving, clipped and casual like a severed phone cord. Sorry, Dad, no room for Thanksgiving this year. We're keeping it small. At first, I thought I misheard. After all, hadn't I raised him? Nursed him through chickenpox, heartbreak, and 2 college rejections? Held his trembling hand the day his mother, my Mary, passed? Hadn't I cheered at every Little League game, even the ones where he struck out 3 times in a row? I stood there in my kitchen, holding the receiver a little longer than necessary, as though the warmth of his voice might return if I waited. It didn't. I set the phone down gently, like it might bruise. My thumb brushed against a note I had taped to the fridge. Buy cranberries. Bake pies. Don't forget Jacob's favorite pecan. Jacob, my grandson, 8 years old, freckles like cinnamon sugar. Every Thanksgiving, he sat beside me and insisted on eating dessert first, because life's too short to wait for pie, Grandpa. I smiled at the memory, a crooked thing that didn't quite reach my eyes. I told myself it was okay. That families change, that plans change. That maybe they were being cautious because of the flu, or finances, or who knows what. I even told myself I was proud of them, proud they were being responsible. But the lie tasted like sawdust in my throat. That night, I still basted the turkey. Out of habit. Out of hope. Wednesday evening came with a soft drizzle and the loneliness of leaves tapping at the window like forgotten guests. I set the table anyway. Just one place. Out of stubbornness. Or love. Or both. I played Nat King Cole on the old record player. The crackle between notes sounded a lot like silence. I even lit the good candles. Mary's candles. The ones she saved for real occasions. When I was done, I sat down with a glass of cider and stared at the flickering flame, letting my thoughts drift like dust motes in the candlelight. And then, at 8:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from Jacob's mother's Instagram. My fingers hovered. I hesitated. But then I opened it. There they were. The whole family. Smiling. Laughing. Plates piled high with stuffing, sweet potatoes, cranberry relish, and yes, pecan pie. In the background, the dining table was extended, covered in a white linen cloth I hadn't seen since our 40th anniversary. The one Mary had embroidered by hand. They weren't keeping it small. They were keeping it from me. I stared at the photos, one by one. Each click like a pinprick to the chest. There was Jacob in his little button-up shirt, holding a wishbone between him and his cousin I'd never met. There was my son, carving the turkey with the same knife I gave him when he moved out. And there was a woman, my daughter-in-law's sister, I think, sitting in my chair at the head of the table. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear sizzled against the back of my hand. I wiped it away, ashamed. Like grief should only belong to the young. Then came the worst one, a group photo. Everyone together, arms wrapped around each other like vines, smiling with mouths open wide, like joy was an ocean and I had forgotten how to swim. In the caption, thankful for our tight little circle. Grateful for a peaceful, intimate Thanksgiving. Tight little circle. It was the intimacy that burned. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, in the quiet ruins of what was supposed to be. The turkey cooled. The candles melted down to wax puddles. The pie remained untouched. I thought of calling. But what would I say? Would I beg to be remembered next time? Would I scream? Cry? Would I speak calmly and ask what I had done to deserve being edited out of my own family's traditions? In the end, I said nothing. Instead, I rose at dawn, packed up the untouched food, and drove to the church shelter on 8th and Marlowe. They were expecting 100 people that day. People with stories far worse than mine. People who had lost homes, health, names. I didn't mention why I was there, just told them I had extra food and 2 good hands ready to help. By noon, I was ladling mashed potatoes into paper plates, smiling at strangers who called me Sir and Mr. Russell. One young man even said I looked like his grandpa. I told him, then your grandpa must be a handsome old devil. And he laughed so hard he nearly dropped his tray. That laugh healed something in me I didn't know was broken. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon like a coin into a wishing well, I sat beside a woman named Denise. She was 62, had lost her husband to cancer last spring, and her children hadn't spoken to her in 2 years. I guess we're the leftovers, she said, sipping her cocoa. I looked around at the room full of tired, smiling faces. No, I said. We're the main course, they just don't know it. We clinked styrofoam cups and let the warmth settle into our bones. I returned home that night with an empty casserole dish and a full heart. I didn't check Instagram. I didn't call. Instead, I sat by the window, watched the wind nudge the trees, and thought of Mary, of how she always said families are not made by blood alone, but by kindness, choice, and those who show up when it matters most. She was right. The days that followed moved slowly, like feet dragging through fresh snow. Every morning I got up, made my coffee the same way Mary used Tablack, with a whisper of cinnamon, and sat by the window, letting the steam and silence keep me company. It wasn't that I was angry anymore. Not exactly. Anger burns fast, but what lingers afterward is colder. Something like hollowness. You don't scream. You don't cry. You just live in the quiet of what they left behind. But something changed in me that Thanksgiving Day. That shelter, the faces, the laughter, the hunger not just for food but for being seen, it lit a match inside me I didn't know I still had. So I went back. The next Sunday, I returned to the shelter with a tray of leftover lasagna and an old board game tucked under my arm. By the following week, I was coming twice. By mid-December, they gave me a name tag, Russell Volunteer. It was strange. I had spent decades building houses, raising a family, paying bills, doing all the right things, yet somehow, peeling carrots in a soup kitchen with Denise and Marco and old Sergeant Bill made me feel more useful than I had in years. And people started telling me their stories. Denise had been a librarian for 28 years. When her husband died, grief swallowed her whole, and her kids couldn't reach her. Or maybe didn't try. Marco was barely 30, kicked out by parents who couldn't accept who he loved. Sergeant Bill had fought in 2 wars, but it was loneliness that broke him in the end. They weren't sad stories. Not really. They were stories like mine. Full of bruises, yes, but also full of survival. And for the first time in a long time, I stopped thinking of myself as left out. I was just somewhere else, with others who'd been misplaced by the world. Christmas was the first real test. I hadn't decorated the house in years. The attic still held the plastic bins Mary had labeled in her neat cursive. Ornaments fragile, nativity set, tree skirt. I stood at the bottom of the pull-down ladder for almost 10 minutes before finally climbing it. The scent of dust and old cardboard greeted me like an old dog. I opened the first bin, and there it was, our angel, the one Jacob had once dropped and cried over until I told him her broken wing made her fly better. I brought it all down. Stringing lights across the mantel, I played Nat King Cole again, and this time, the record's crackles didn't sound like loneliness. They sounded like memory. Still, when Christmas Eve rolled around, I didn't expect much. I had mailed a card to my son. Wrote nothing fancy, just hope you're well. Dad. I didn't mention Thanksgiving. Didn't ask for anything. Just sent a message, quiet and clear. I'm still here. I didn't expect a reply, which is why I nearly dropped my cocoa when the doorbell rang at 7:03 p.m. I shuffled to the door, unlatched it slowly. And there he was, my son, standing on my porch in a snow-dusted coat, holding a red tin box in his gloved hands. His eyes looked older than I remembered. He smiled, nervous. Hi, Dad. I blinked. You get lost on the way to your tight little circle? He winced. I deserve that. I didn't let him off the hook. And the photos? I didn't know Jen was posting those. We invited more people at the last minute. It wasn't planned like that. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. He hesitated. I didn't know how to say no to everyone else without looking like the bad guy. I folded my arms. But saying no to me was easy. That cut deeper than I meant it to. His face fell. You're right, he said quietly. I screwed up. The snow kept falling. A flake landed on his eyelashes and didn't melt. I looked at him for a long moment, then stepped aside. Come in before you freeze. He did. Sat at the same table that had once held empty plates and quiet candles. He opened the tin. Pecan cookies, just like Mary used to make. We didn't talk much that night, but when he hugged me before he left, it was the kind of hug that carries an apology without needing words. And later, after the door shut behind him, I sat in the armchair and allowed myself, just once, to hope. January came. Cold, crisp, quiet. Most mornings, I was back at the shelter. I'd been promoted to meal coordinator, which sounded more important than it was, but I wore it like a badge anyway. One day, Denise leaned over while we were prepping lentil stew and said, You ever think about organizing something bigger? Like what? I asked. She shrugged. I don't know. Something that's ours. Not a charity thing. Not a handout. Just something human. Something that brings folks together. I thought about it that night. Sat with the idea like a seed in my palm. Something that's ours. By February, I started planning. I called it the Tuesday Table. Every Tuesday evening, we hosted a meal not just for the hungry, but for anyone who needed to feel invited. No forms. No judgments. Just food, chairs, and space. We held it in the basement of St. Luke's at first. Then the local middle school offered their cafeteria. By April, we had over 60 people showing up: weekly students, nurses, truckers, grandmas, runaways, tired dads. All of them craving something deeper than dinner. We laughed. We cried. We passed bread and stories. I kept a photo album of every week, labeled each one with the date and the name of the dish we served. I made sure to take a photo of every table, not just the food, but the people. The way their eyes softened. The way strangers leaned in. The way walls fell down. And in each photo, I saw something I'd almost forgotten existed: belonging. In late May, Jacob showed up. I didn't expect it. I was stirring a massive pot of chili when I saw him walking toward me, holding a tray. He looked taller, hair longer, cheeks thinner. He smiled shyly. "Mom said you were cooking for, like, a whole town." I chuckled. "Feels like it some nights." He handed me the tray. I brought cornbread. I looked down at the foil-wrapped pan, then up at his freckled face. "You remember how we used to eat dessert first?" He grinned. I brought cookies too. That night, he sat beside me at the Tuesday table. We talked about school, science fairs, the guitar he was learning to play. I listened like a starving man, hungry for every detail. At the end of the night, he hugged me hard. And then he said, "I told Dad he was an idiot for what he did." I laughed. "Don't be too hard on him. He knows now. He's trying." I nodded. "That's all we can ask." By summer, Tuesday Table was featured in the local paper. A journalist came, asked for my quote. I told her the truth. I used to think being forgotten was the worst pain in the world. But it's not. The worst pain is believing you have nothing left to give and being wrong about it. She printed it, right under a photo of me and Denise serving blueberry cobbler. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. From my daughter. We hadn't spoken in 6 years. Not since the argument about her moving across the country with her partner. I had said things I regretted. Pride kept me silent, kept her away. But her letter was warm, open. I saw the article, "Dad," she wrote. I cried in my kitchen. She said she was proud of me, that she wanted to visit, that maybe we could start again. I held the letter in my lap for a long time, then picked up the phone and dialed her number. It rang once before she answered. "Hi, Dad," she said. Her voice was soft, nervous. I didn't waste a second. "Come for Tuesday. We're making lasagna." She laughed through her tears. "I'd love that." That night, I sat by the window again, same seat, same breeze. But everything felt different now. I was still alone in the room, still in the same worn chair. But I no longer felt empty. I had my son trying, my grandson baking, my daughter reaching. I had Denise and Marco and Bill. I had stories, laughter, memory, community. I had a table. And no matter what, I'd always keep a seat open for anyone who needed it. Because that's what Mary would have wanted. Because that's what love does. Because next time someone tells me they're keeping it small, I'll smile and say, "Then come sit with us. We make it big." Summer burned on gently, like a candle not quite ready to die. Tuesday Table grew with the season, not just in numbers, but in heart. We had a routine by then. Denise handled desserts. She made a chocolate banana bread that could heal marriages. Marco greeted every person at the door with a high five and a welcome home. Sergeant Bill managed the folding chairs like a general preparing for battle, efficient, stern, loving underneath the bark. And me? I cooked. Big meals. Warm meals. Meals that made your shoulders drop and your mouth hum after the second bite. But more than that, I watched. I watched an ex-con teach a single mom how to fix her radiator in the parking lot. I watched 2 kids, one white, one black, swap last names and trade peanut butter secrets. I watched a man cry over the soup because it tasted just like his grandmother's from back in Georgia. And I realized something. This noisy, mismatched, made-from-scratch thing we were doing, it was family. Maybe not the kind tied by blood or forced by name, but chosen, built, daily. I thought of Mary a lot. She would have been proud. She always said food was never just food, it was a bridge. I imagined her ghost walking the hall, straightening napkins, humming, "You Are My Sunshine," under her breath. She'd always sung that to the kids, and even now, I swore I heard it sometimes, floating from the boiler room vents like memory was leaking out of the walls. One Tuesday in August, something different happened. A woman came in alone, maybe mid-50s. Nice coat, real leather. Eyes like broken glass. She didn't take food right away, just sat at the edge of the room, hands folded in her lap. Watching. I noticed. I always noticed. I brought her a plate myself: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans with bacon. She looked at it like it was a peace treaty. "I'm not homeless," she said quickly. "Most folks here aren't," I replied, sitting down across from her. "Some are just hungry. Some are just tired. Some just want to be seen." Her eyes softened. She picked up the fork. "I'm Clara Russell." She took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "My husband left last month. 31 years. Just packed up and said he didn't love me anymore." I nodded. Didn't say I was sorry. Just waited. My kids sided with him. Said I was too cold, too traditional, that I never really listened to them. Maybe they're right. But I gave them everything. "You still can," I said. She looked up. "Even after they shut the door?" I smiled. "Doors can reopen. And when they don't, you build your own damn house." Clara kept coming back. By September, she was running the donations table, sorting through canned corn and gently used coats like she was running her own boutique. She smiled more, laughed sometimes, cried less. One night she turned to me and said, "Do you ever get tired of being the strong one?" I thought for a moment. Then I said, "I get tired of pretending it doesn't hurt." That answer sat between us like a stone. We didn't talk for a while after that. But when she handed me a lemon bar later, she had slipped a note under the napkin. It just said, "Thank you for not fixing me, just feeding me." As fall tiptoed in, gold leaves crunching like secrets underfoot, I began thinking about Thanksgiving again. The memory of last year still ached, like a bruise under a sweater. Not visible, but you still flinch when someone brushes too close. I didn't know what to expect this time. Part of me feared a repeat. Another call, another excuse, another caption. But part of me was stronger now. So I made a plan. Tuesday table would host Thanksgiving. A real one. Big. Loud. Full of music and mismatched chairs and way too much pie. We posted signs around town. Talked to schools, churches, shelters. I called every person who had ever said, "I don't have anywhere to go that day." We called it Open Table. I reserved the entire high school gym. Marco handled music. Denise, desserts. Bill got so many chairs donated we nearly buried him in folding metal. I cooked with more purpose than I had in years. 3 turkeys, 5 pans of stuffing, cranberry sauce by the gallon, and 2 pecan pies, one just for Jacob. Then, the night before Thanksgiving, the phone rang. It was my son. "Hey, Dad." "Hey." Long pause. "So I heard about the dinner. Biggest one yet. Jacob's been talking about it for weeks." "Smart kid." He chuckled, awkward. "Listen," he said. "I was wondering, I know we screwed things up last year. I know it's late, but would it be okay if we came?" I blinked. My throat tightened. "You sure you're not keeping it small?" I asked, teasing. He laughed. "No, we want big this year." I closed my eyes. Let the warmth flood my chest. "Then bring an appetite," I said. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and bright. The kind of cold that makes your teeth ache and your heart feel brave. People started arriving at noon. At first, just a trickle, then a stream, then a flood. I saw old friends, new ones, strangers who became neighbors in minutes. Laughter echoed off gym walls. Dishes clattered. Music floated. Children chased each other between tables. And then I saw them. My son, Jacob, his wife, all 3 carrying dishes, all 3 smiling. Jacob ran to me first, wrapped his arms around my middle like I was the last tree in a storm. "I saved room for pie this time," he said. "Good," I replied. "We made 2. My son approached slower. Older now. Quieter. "Dad," he said, looking me in the eye. I waited. I've spent a year trying to find the words. But I think the best ones are, "I was wrong." I didn't make him say more. I just pulled him into my arms and said, "So was I?" But here we are. That night, I stood in the middle of that gym, surrounded by noise and light, and the beautiful chaos of people trying to belong to each other. And I knew I had not been left behind. I had been rerouted. Sometimes family takes a detour. Sometimes love comes through the back door. Sometimes healing arrives in an apron with flour on its sleeve. But it arrives. I looked at the long rows of tables candlelit, messy, loud in thought. This is not the Thanksgiving I expected. It is better. By the time the last chair was folded and the final crumbs swept into a dustpan, it was nearly midnight. The gym had emptied out, the lights dimmed low, and the air still smelled faintly of sage, cinnamon, and laughter. I stood alone for a moment, in the center of it all, surrounded by the ghosts of a day well lived. I thought I would feel tired. I didn't. I felt full. Not the kind of full that makes your belt too tight. A different kind. The kind that wraps around your chest and holds you gently. The kind that tells you, you did something that mattered. Clara walked past with a tray of leftover pie. Take one, she said, or I'll tell Denise you passed up her apple crumble. I grabbed a slice. We ate in companionable silence, side by side on the edge of the stage like two kids sneaking dessert. You ever think you'd be here? She asked softly. In a high school gym with 300 strangers and one slice of warm pie? I grinned. Not exactly in the blueprint. She nudged me. You built something. You know that, right? I looked around. No, I said. We built something. Christmas came fast. And with it came something I hadn't expected in years, an invitation. From my daughter. A real one. With a photo of her and her wife and their dog, Jasper, in front of a fireplace. Inside it read, Dad, come spend Christmas with us. No performances. No grudges. Just warmth. We want to know you again. I sat with it in my lap for a long while. My hands trembled slightly as I traced the print. It had taken years to get here. Words said in anger. Pride like armor. Distance growing like a weed. But this was light through the cracks. I called her that evening. Hey, sweetheart, I said. I got your card. You'll come. I already packed a bag. That Christmas was quiet in the best way. We drank cider, watched old movies, walked through snow-covered trails with Jasper leading the way like a tiny, unqualified guide dog. We didn't talk about the fight, or the years between. We didn't have to. We cooked together, sang off-key to carols, played Scrabble until someone me, cheated with the word snorfling. And when the fire burned low on Christmas night, my daughter rested her head on my shoulder. Why'd it take us so long? She whispered. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, because forgiveness is brave, and we had to grow into it. She nodded. We didn't need more than that. New Year's Eve back at home was simple. I invited a few Tuesday table folks over. Clara, Denise, Marco, Sergeant Bill. Even Jacob and his parents stopped in. We played charades, made bad resolutions, counted down with sparkling grape juice and plastic horns. When midnight struck, we all shouted, cheered, hugged. I watched Jacob blow a party streamer right into Sergeant Bill's face, then fall over laughing. And for a moment, I just let it wash over me. The noise, the joy, the healing. We had come so far. I had come so far. One afternoon in February, while organizing food donations at the shelter, I found a small, crumpled envelope tucked beneath a box of canned peaches. My name was scrawled on the front. Inside was a letter. No return address. Just this. You don't know me. I was at the Thanksgiving dinner. I was going to take my own life that week. But that night sitting at your table, hearing the music, eating that pumpkin bread, something changed. I don't know what. But I decided to stay. Thank you for saving my life. I'll never forget you. I held that letter for a long time. The way you hold something fragile and burning all at once. Then I folded it carefully, put it in my wallet, and carried it with me every day after that. Spring arrived with birdsong and crocuses, and the kind of breeze that feels like forgiveness. At Tuesday table, we started planting a community garden beside the church. Tomatoes, herbs, rows of hopeful green things sprouting from soil. Jacob came by often. He loved the garden, dug his hands in the dirt, asked questions about seeds and watering and sunlight. One day he asked, how do you know if something's going to grow? I thought for a moment. You don't, I said. You just give it everything you've got. And hope. He smiled. Sounds like family. Yeah, I said. It does. By June, Open Table had turned into a nonprofit. We had a board, a mission, a small grant from the city, and a waiting list of people who wanted to volunteer. They asked me to be the face of it, to tell my story at events, ribbon cuttings, fundraisers. At first, I didn't want to. I told them I was too old, too tired, not the right kind of person. But Clara, God bless Clara, set me straight. Russell, she said, you are exactly the right person. Because you lost everything. And then you gave everything. And then you built something no one else thought was possible. So I did it. I stood up in front of crowds and told the truth. About that Thanksgiving. About the photos. About the ache. And then about the table. The meals. The people. The ones who stayed. The ones we saved. I told them. I thought I was abandoned. But I was just being repotted. Laughter, sometimes. Tears, often. But always applause. Because people knew deep down what I meant. They knew what it felt like to be left out. And to want back in. The next Thanksgiving was our biggest yet. 500 people. 12 turkeys. 300 pies donated by local bakeries. Live jazz band. Face painting for kids. A gratitude wall with sticky notes from every attendee. I didn't cook that year. I watched. Watched as Clara ran the kitchen like a general. Watched as Jacob passed out napkins and told jokes to toddlers. Watched as Denise danced with Sergeant Bill in the center of the gym floor like they were the prom king and queen. I watched it all, and I gave thanks. Not the forced kind. Not the polite prayer before a meal. The real kind. The kind that fills your chest until it aches with fullness. The kind that whispers, you are exactly where you're meant to be. After everyone left, Jacob stayed behind to help clean up. He and I sat on the stage, like I had with Clara a year before. Grandpa, he said, I'm glad you didn't stay mad. I smiled. I was never mad at you. But at Dad. I nodded. A little. But more than that, I was hurt. Disappointed. Forgotten. Jacob looked at me. He knows now. He's different. So am I said. And that's the miracle. What miracle? That sometimes people come back. And sometimes, when they don't, you still get to build something beautiful with what's left. He nodded thoughtfully, then added, I want to do Tuesday table when I grow up. You don't have to wait. He smiled. Okay, then I'm in. The next morning, I found a card on my porch. No signature. Just, thank you for setting a bigger table. This world needs more of them. You made us feel like we belonged. I stood on my porch a long time after that, watching the wind nudge the leaves across the yard. And I thought, once upon a time, I was told, no room for Thanksgiving, we're keeping it small. But now I know the truth. There is always room. For more chairs, more voices, more healing, more family chosen or found, more stories, more pie, more love. All you have to do is open the door and set the table. The chair was still there, folded, leaning against the far end of the pantry wall at St. Luke's church basement. Rusty at the hinges. Seat slightly frayed, but I'd never thrown it out. It was the extra chair, the one we always kept in case someone new showed up. It never matched the rest of the set, and that was exactly why I loved it. Funny thing is, that chair saw more life than most people I knew. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind of day where the wind was just starting to bite, but the trees hadn't given up their leaves yet. Golden light poured through the stained glass windows of the church basement, catching steam rising from the giant pot of stew Denise stirred with her usual sass. Needs more garlic, she announced, throwing in 2 cloves like she was casting a spell. Everything in life needs more garlic except romance. That needs patience and Febreze. I chuckled. You planning to charm someone tonight, Denise? She raised an eyebrow. If charm were soup, I'd be Michelin-starred. Marco was setting up the paper place cards. He'd started printing names now, even adding little doodles. Sergeant Bill brought in a fresh stack of bowls. Clara was late, which was odd. I checked my watch. Then the door opened. But it wasn't Clara. It was someone else. A girl. Late 20s, maybe. Pale under her hoodie. Eyes like she'd memorized every shade of sadness. She hesitated at the threshold, one foot still outside, like she wasn't sure the welcome was real. Hi, I said, wiping my hands on a towel. You're just in time. She looked behind her, then back at me. Is this Tuesday table? That's us, I said. You hungry? She nodded slowly. I pointed toward the stack of chairs. Pick a seat. Or take the extra. She blinked. The extra? I nodded to the mismatched one in the corner. We always leave a chair open. For someone just like you. Her name was Maddie. She didn't tell me that until after dessert. But I didn't push. I'd learned not to ask too much, too fast. Sometimes people come to the table carrying more than hunger. They carry stories, and you don't cut those open until they're ready. But I noticed the little things. The way she flinched when someone dropped a spoon. How she kept her coat on, even indoors. How her eyes darted every time someone laughed like joy was something dangerous. I served her stew and a slice of cornbread. She barely touched the stew, but she devoured the bread like it had been sent from heaven. Denise made it, I told her. She smiled faintly. Tastes like something my mom used to make. That's when I saw the first crack. Clara came in about halfway through dinner, winded and flushed. Sorry I'm late. Was on the phone with social services. They're slow as cold molasses. Then she noticed Maddie. Clara never asked either. She just offered a second piece of bread and asked, "Do you play cards?" By the end of the night, Maddie was watching a raucous game of Uno between Bill and a 9-year-old who swore every time she lost. When Maddie left, she turned to me and said, "Thanks for not asking." I nodded. "Thanks for showing up." She came back the next week, this time with a little girl in tow. 5, maybe 6. Tiny, tangled hair. Big eyes like sea glass. Clung to Maddie's coat like she was part of it. "This is Nora," Maddie said, barely above a whisper. "My daughter." Denise dropped her spoon. "Well, hello, Nora," she said in a sing-song voice. "Do you like mac and cheese?" Nora nodded behind Maddie's leg. "Well, we have the best mac in the city. So good it makes forks jealous." Nora giggled. That night, they sat at the extra chair together. 2 people in one space. Maddie barely ate, but Nora asked for seconds. Maddie watched her like someone waiting for permission to breathe. Weeks passed. Fall deepened. Maddie became a regular. She started helping wiping tables, folding chairs, even suggesting we swap the instant cocoa for real hot chocolate. She still flinched sometimes, still sat near the door, but something in her was slowly settling. Then one night, after a dinner of chili and cornbread, she stayed back and helped me mop. We worked in silence for a while. Then she said, "He used to hit me." I stopped mopping. She stared at the suds. "He said it was my fault. Said I was nothing. Said if I left, he'd find me." Hurt her. I didn't speak. She looked up. "But here, I don't feel invisible." She paused, then added, "You saved me, Russell. You and that chair." My throat tightened. "I didn't save you, Maddie. You saved you. We just set a place." Thanksgiving came. Our 3rd annual open table. 600 people this time. 6 turkeys. Too many pies. Jacob made little table tents with messages like "You belong here" and "Come back next Tuesday." Maddie helped run registration. Nora passed out cookies with a badge that said "Official Pie Inspector." At one point, Maddie stood next to me, watching the room bustle. She looked out over the tables at the laughter, the chaos, the humanity, and said, "I didn't know life could sound like this." I smiled. It always did. Sometimes we just forget how to listen. Later that night, when the gym had emptied and we were stacking chairs, I noticed the extra one still sitting by the door. Alone. Waiting. I didn't move it. I let it sit there. Because someone else might need it next week. And when they do, it'll be there. Worn. Imperfect. Open. Just like the rest of us. Spring bloomed early the next year. Crocuses opened on the church lawn. Birds returned to the gutters. The old oak outside the shelter budded with new green. One Tuesday, I arrived early and found Maddie waiting at the pantry door, holding a folded piece of paper. "What's that?" I asked. She bit her lip, handed it to me. It was a job offer. A real one. Social work assistant at the Family Resource Center. Full-time. Benefits. A small apartment nearby. "They want me to help women like I used to be," she said. I looked up. "That's not who you are anymore." "I know," she smiled. "That's why I'm ready." I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "Do you have to leave?" She nodded. "But I'll come back. For Tuesday dinners. And for holidays. I promise." I hugged her tight. "You don't owe us anything," I whispered. "But thank you for letting us love you." Her last night at Tuesday table, Nora brought me a hand-drawn card. Crayon hearts, stick figures holding plates of food. It said, "Thank you for the chair. I will keep it in my new room. Love, Nora." I asked her, "Which chair?" She pointed to the extra one. "The old, wobbly, paint-chipped thing. I want to keep it so if someone visits us and they're sad they have a place to sit." That night, I loaded it into their borrowed van myself. Watched as Maddie buckled Nora in, turned the key, and waved through the open window. They drove off into the soft pink of a spring evening. And I stood there, hands in my pockets, heart full. Some stories don't end. They just keep pulling more people to the table.